Stop. Black Americans are being hunted and murdered in Mississippi. I'm going to say that again because it's horrifying, and the mainstream media is too busy allowing the Trump administration to dominate the news cycle, lying about the economy, downplaying the war, ignoring the health outbreaks, and the upcoming healthcare cuts to take even a moment to talk about the Black people being targeted for death in the state of Mississippi. And before you say I'm being hyperbolic about this, if we had this many unexplainable deaths of white children happening in one state, you know the media would be losing their collective minds. One beautiful white girl was killed by an undocumented immigrant, and the Republican Party ran their entire election and then wrote an aggressive immigration bill in her name. But we are watching Black person after Black person after Black person lose their lives under unexplained circumstances, many of them being found strung up in trees, and no foul play is being called by the police or the medical examiner or any investigative reporters. I need you to stay with me on this because I understand this is very uncomfortable, but it is essential that we understand what is really happening, especially if you look like me or you live in the South or you have a family member or you yourself are in law enforcement. When someone Black ends up hung for no discernible reason in questionable circumstances with no indication the victim was suicidal, that's what's called lynching. But when this happens in a state that refused to pass a standalone anti-lynching bill in 2026, the state that didn't ratify the 13th Amendment formally abolishing slavery until 1995, 130 years after it was passed by Congress, and didn't even make it official until 2013 because of a clerical error, when this kind of thing happens in the state that recorded more lynchings than any U.S. state between 1882 and 1968, with at least 581 documented racial terror killings, the only state that banned Sesame Street because they didn't like white and Black children being shown playing together, then you start to see a pattern and a major problem. The adults in charge of Mississippi seem determined to keep their generations of hate and division going strong, and people are dying because of it. We have endless media discussion and laws and attention paid to the 14 trans people who might want to play college sports in America. We have multiple made-up think pieces about the unacceptable rise of non-existent communism. But 10 Black people found hanging from trees in one state isn't a cause for concern? Why? We know why. And to be clear, it looks like at least 13 Black people have been found hanging from trees in this country since September 2024, most of them declared self-inflicted by authorities. But the Black community has been determined to point out that Black people do not hang themselves from trees, that historically that is something that has been done to them. And we know that because one of the most recent deaths was Tysa Fortune, who was found hanging so high in a tree that the authorities needed a fire truck to get her down. It's pretty obvious that girl didn't do that to herself, but who did? Who would be able to do such a thing? And why did no one see anything? Because that's odd, right? Especially when we can track pretty much anyone anywhere now with those horrible flock cameras. But in this case, nothing. And when these deaths are ruled a suicide, or alternatively, not foul play, no one ends up looking for the commonality between the deaths. Evidence isn't collected or compared. A pattern isn't established. If these hangings had been ruled murders or even cause of death unknown, then maybe there would be some progress in justice. But here, no, nothing. Remember, this is the same state, and in many cases, the same medical examiner who seemed incredibly cagey on the recent death of Nolan Xavier Wells, the brilliant, beautiful Black teenager who went missing and then was found dead after going out with his white friends on the 4th of July. The same white friends who came home without him, the same ones who can't get their story straight, and the same ones who one of their moms is a local judge. In fact, I think the country's preoccupation with the death of Nolan Wells is surprising to the powers that be in Mississippi, because Black people have been ending up dead in their state since forever, and things just move along, but not this one. Because the world is watching this one now, and there's a lot more questions than there are answers. Mississippi needs to be on every American's radar because Black people are being murdered there. Because there is no federal oversight on local law enforcement, because so far we don't even have media coverage or congressional action. As Reverend Whitfield of Gulfport, Mississippi, a very close friend of the Wells family, recently said, justice cannot thrive in the shadows. When an 18-year-old's life is lost under troubling circumstances, transparency is not a privilege to be granted. It is a public obligation. We owe Nolan Wells and his family and every citizen nothing less than a complete, impartial, and transparent investigation. Truth is the foundation on which justice stands. Every single person who ends up dead, no matter their creed, their color, their religion, whatever, deserves this kind of attention. It's just that Black people in Mississippi rarely get it, and none of us should be okay with that. There are people right now living among us who are lynching Black people. And if you know someone who is doing this, think someone might be doing this, have any information on what might be going on, then you need to speak up. And I understand that's hard in a state like Mississippi when it's often assumed that law enforcement and the justice system are complicit, but then go to the FBI. And I know the FBI is a shell of what it once was, but we cannot continue to do nothing. I would also like to remind you that in recent statewide elections, Democrats came within 3 percentage points of winning in Mississippi. Like many southern states, Mississippi is not red, it is blue suppressed, which means Mississippi is not irredeemable, but it needs our attention because this is what systemic racism looks like in practice. This is what happens when racism is built into a system brick by brick. And this is what must finally come to an end. The time has come to stop turning a blind eye. The time has come for justice.